All right, everybody, time for another panel session. This one, actually, Nina workshop titles with me. Thank you very much for that.
Absolutely.
We decided to call this The Future of Snow Sports. Nina threw a question mark on at the end. So the future of snow sports, I guess, is how you properly pronounce this panel session. Let me kind of offer this as the cue ball break. I've just been thinking a lot about snow sports and what we're doing well, where we can improve, and as we just said in the title, the future of this whole thing. Two big things that I think are important to think about. We've spent a lot of time talking about climate change in terms of what that might look like for the future of snow sports. I have found myself thinking more about demographics. How are we today, how are companies today in the snow sports industry talking to young people? Are we bringing young people into these sports? And how are we doing in terms of just broadening the base of people who like to slide around on snow? So those are just a few of the questions I had, and what I like to do sometimes is then just create panel sessions about some of the things I'm wondering about. And that's exactly what we've done here tonight. So with that as a bit of an introduction, I would love to have our panelists just tell you a little bit about who they are before we get into some pretty big topics and hopefully some very good ideas. So Nina, tell the folks about you.
Of course. Hi, everybody. My name is Nina Waters. I am an ambassador for Blizzard-Tecnica, the Women-to-Women program, as well as Kari Tra. I am one of their ambassadors as well. And I am really involved. I'll do a lot of work in DE&I. So that, for those who don't know what that is, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so I do a lot of that in the idea of bringing more people to the outdoors. People who have never experienced it or never had an idea that they could ever experience what the outdoors could bring to their lives. So that's something that I take a lot of passion in. I also am on the Blizzard-Tecnica IDEA team, so we are kind of the team that brings some of these diverse groups to the mountains and try to get them on snow particularly, but I also, in the summer, I'm a raft guide, so I try to get them on rivers as well. So, yeah. Glad to be here.
Len.
Hi, my name is Len Necefer. I'm the Chief Facet Officer of the Sonoran Avalanche Center. We're a for-profit avalanche center based in Tucson, Arizona. Right? Looking at, one of the areas we've been working a lot in is in non-snow avalanches. If you look in the dictionary, it'll define avalanches as, of course, snow, but they talk about rock, dirt, all those other things, and we figure there's a for-profit opportunity there. We've been working a lot with companies on talking about climate change, shit posting on the internet, because that's a lot of fun, and basically using thirst traps to get people to vote. It's, all of the above. But yeah, we have our company car here. It's an Italian sports car. It's fully wrapped. You might see it in the parking lot. But we're here to just raise awareness about, the importance of where our facets are coming from. There's a lot of questions about what the government's doing, what Vail's doing. We really have to look deep into this, so that's why I'm here.
Hanna, good luck following that.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that one, but I'm Hanna Whirty. I am the marketing director at Icelantic skis. If you're not familiar with Icy, we're a Colorado brand. Born and bred Colorado. We make our skis in Denver, and I guess I wear just a lot of hats at the company. And lately I've been trying to lead and kind of present more experience-based trips to our audience, which I think is kind of relevant to today's discussion. But yeah, I'm super stoked to be here. Thanks for having me.
Dan, who are you?
I am Dan Abrams. I'm one of Jonathan's patients. When I have boot problems, I call Jonathan.
Mm-hmm.
When I have ski problems, I call Jonathan. But I'm also the co-founder and president of Flylow Gear, which is a ski clothing company that has a lot of home bases, one of which is Colorado, and Tahoe, and Jackson, and Seattle. And I started the company in my mom's basement, and I am still a devout, habitual skier, and have built my life around being able to ski most days, or mountain bike, when there's no snow. And I think that I just try to pay attention to what's going on in the outdoor industry, and that Flylow's a reflection of the community. So it's interesting to have a touch point on every part of a company because we're small, and when there's successes, it's like I have a lot of good people that I work with, and when there's failures, it falls on me. So don't take any of it lightly, but I'm having a good time doing it.
Well done. So, we've got a lot of people from a lot of snow sports companies in this room. And, I think this will be a great thing because I think some of the things that you folks will be hearing tonight, you'll be like, oh, good, yeah, we're kind of doing that. And then there will be other things where it's like, we never thought of that. And, I think that as Nina and I were talking about this the other day, again, I think we have come to, probably many of us have sort of heard like, oh, if you happen to like skiing or snowboarding, bit of an existential threat if all snow goes away. But again, I've just been thinking too about, well, if the community of people who mountain bike, ski, raft, like to go outside, if that demographic continues to age or continues to sort of stay narrow in terms of who we're bringing into these things, also an existential threat. It's not what I'm afraid of because I think that we are better than that and smart enough to adjust course. Everybody always, every company, every industry should be adjusting course. So again, sorry, I guess that was my second introduction, but I want to now turn it to you. And maybe Nina, tell us a little bit about, you mentioned, say it again, the ideas.
The idea team.
The idea team. Okay, that seems like a good place to start given what I just was saying I was wondering about. How have you all been thinking about some of these things?
Yeah. So the idea team at Blizzard-Tecnica, we have a kind of a twofold purpose. So we do a lot of work externally by bringing on different groups and organizations like SOS Outreach, providing them with whatever they need, whatever that group or ski touring or inclusive ski touring, which is based out of the East Coast. These groups, they're just trying to get more people to ski. And so we work with them and kind of sit down with them and ask them, like, what is it you're trying to do and what can we do? So that's one side of the coin, right? But the part that I find really interesting is that it's also, it's an internal program as well. So the idea team also focuses a lot on diversifying and hiring practices. They work a lot on trying to make the company Blizzard-Tecnica Group, which encompasses a couple other brands as well in the snow sports and also an outdoor industry. We try to kind of diversify, shake it up. I think something that a lot of people forget about, or I think what we're starting to clue in actually a lot more on, is the idea of diversify or die. Right? In the last couple of years, our country, our way of life has had this major reckoning of realizing that, like, oh, if we don't change, we're going to continue to repeat the same problems and the same trajectory that we've been doing, and something has got to break because we're tired, right? We're all tired of seeing like violence on our televisions. We're tired of seeing the world crumble in front of us. What can we do to change that? And so, what we can do in the snow world is, well, we can diversify our company, right? We can start there and maybe try to open people's eyes to being like, well, this is something that I've never done. Full transparency, I didn't know how to ski 8 years ago. I grew up in Florida, and it was like, I moved to Summit County kind of on a whim for some other reasons, and I was like, wow, people slide on planks of wood down that shit. you got to be nuts.
Yeah.
And then I did it, and I was like, oh, wow, this is like the most addictive thing that I've ever done in my entire life. But it's changed my life for the better, and we're trying to do that internally as a company, but then externally by diversifying what we do, diversifying the ways that we've done things. Because I think in the grand scheme of things, right, we'd all be better for it, wouldn't we? And so, yeah. And so that's what we're doing at Blizzard-Tecnica, and, you know, hopefully it can be kind of a pattern that you can recreate in other organizations, not only the ski world, you know, the mountain biking world, all of these different, you know, organizations and brands and groups. So,
Len, I know you spend all of your time figuring out how to get rich off of facets, but do you devote any amount of time to thinking about these issues of who are we talking to currently in snow sports, and what might we do a bit different or better along those lines?
Totally. I'll take off the SAC hat really quick. I run another company called Natives Outdoors.
Oh, yeah, right. I didn't know if you wanted to talk.
SAC started as a joke over a few beers, and it went too far. But I run a company called Natives Outdoors, and we were largely figuring out how do we get more representation of Native peoples in these sports. And the reason is you know, we're in a place that has my people, the Navajo and the Ute, fought over, obviously, because it's got some awesome skiing. But you know, it was, you know, there's a deeper history of these places that we recreate, and one of the things that we've been trying to do is like, how do we build a shared vision and message with the outdoor industry in these places that we all love, that we all have deep connections to? Because, you know, when you get on the ridge out there, or if you're out on skiing and you just have that moment of bliss, I mean, in many ways, that's the basis of a lot of indigenous cultures and the relationships that we have with these places. And being in these landscapes, you get to tap into that too. And so one of the things that we've been working on in the ski industry is figuring out how do we address this issue of cultural appropriation. So cultural appropriation is the use of design, artwork, the cultural property of a marginalized group of people, and that benefit largely doesn't sit with them. One of the things is that we identified early on is that people like these designs. People like indigenous designs. If you've ever seen the Pacific Northwest line form, Navajo rug designs, and we were figuring out how do we create a solution to both meet consumers' demand, but also ensure that there's a benefit back to the community and also Native artists. And so the past couple of years, we've been working with a number of companies, Smart Wool, on connecting them with Native artists. Weston Skis, we've done 2 sets of pairs of skis and split boards and snowboards with them. And one of the things that we saw as really key to that is that, of course, the design's beautiful, but also the story has a lot of power behind that. And so the other part of our work there is film and media and storytelling. And we've built it's taken a lot of money and a lot of time, but we've built an indigenous film and production crew. And in large part, it's one of the things that we saw early on is that when we're working with these artists, we have to ensure that, you know, as filmmakers, their stories get filtered through our lens. And having the competency of knowing and understanding the nuances of where they come from, what the designs mean, and being able to accurately reflect that in brand media or whatever it may be, is something that we saw as sort of the other flip side of that coin. And so we've worked with, on Weston, we did a short piece on our graphic designer, Vernon Key, who is a Marine veteran, an artist, and he's also a dog catcher on the Navajo Nation. So if any of you have a dog in southern Colorado, there's a good chance it went through his house. But, you know, it's like, how do we tell that story, and how do we sort of connect it to a broader audience, but also make it relevant to the Native community? It's always a balance, you know, and it's always trying to figure out how do you do these things authentically, because as we all know, we've seen paid media content that's pretty tacky. And one of the things is that we really try to center those two on product and story. The other angle that we've been approaching that with the Sonoran Avalanche Center is, you know, how do we talk about climate change in a way that's not so doom and gloom? It is doom and gloom, no doubt, but it's easy to turn it off when that's all we're hearing.
Yep.
And so one of the things that we've been really focusing on in Tucson is that we have the southernmost ski area in North America, Mount Lemmon. It's about 1,000 vertical feet. You can see Mexico from the top of the lift. They don't sell Modelo's at the at the base lodge, which I'm kind of bummed about. But you know, it's this idea of like, you know, skiing in Tucson is almost a joke, And, one of the things is that we've seen with the rise of short form video, of chaos posting and that sort of thing, it's something that is connecting with a lot of younger folks. And so it's like, how do we retweak our messaging and branding and the way that we're talking about climate change in a way that engages younger folks, in a way that's funny and fun and like, yeah, haha, we're skiing on rocks. Into a way of, of connecting with that younger audience in a way that draws them in. And then once we need to feed them the vegetables of like, here's the climate science, here's what's happening in the Colorado River, here's what's happening in the snowpacks, they're much more receptive. And so last year, we worked with Protect Our Winners on doing a Get Out the Vote campaign. And it was largely focused on shitposting. And, it's like, how do you make voting sexy? And we literally made voting sexy. If you all are familiar with thirst traps, basically we edited thirst trap videos and then like inserted Cody Townsend to give a get out the vote message about 5 seconds in.
Like the least sexiest person in the world. So that's quite the trick there, yeah.
But it worked, and I think that's one of the things is just it's kind of rethinking and throwing out some of the models of formality and just trying to think what's the culture now and how do we meet it in those different ways.
By the way, I need to tell this because my good friend, the strikingly handsome Justin Bob, he told me this a couple days ago, Len. J-Bob, when he's not producing like 87 podcasts a week for us, is a firefighter in New Mexico. And he told me that his entire team, his entire firehouse, follows the Sonoran Avalanche Center. And he said none of them ski. But they think it's hilarious and awesome. And I was like, okay, we're about to do a panel on like, how do we broaden reach? And one, J-Bob would have been mad at me if I didn't tell you this story. But two, I was like, okay, well, there's one thing right there where we're captivating the interest and attention of people who aren't diehard skiers. They don't even actually do this. And I'm like, man, we need to only like find 197 other ways to do things like that, and then we got it. So you got 196 more to figure out tonight. So anyway, but thank you for that.
Yeah.
Hanna and Dan, I've got a slightly different question for you. From the outside looking in, it seems like your respective companies, Icelantic and Flylow, are doing quite well. There's growth. We're doing well. Businesses, turns out, are hard. So on the one hand, it would make sense to me if it's like, man, we're just trying to keep it all afloat every day, right? I would get that. I'm curious to hear from either both of you, how much time do you think about the sort of things the questions I've raised tonight in terms of sort of even future-proofing your own companies? Hanna?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a constant struggle. I think a lot of people can feel in any job that they're in, right? That you're so inundated by the day-to-day, your micro tasks, whatever you're doing to keep your business afloat, that a lot of times it can be hard to take a step back and think holistically of like, okay, where are we heading? What are we doing? Are we doing a good job as a company to accomplish all of these things that we've talked about, but maybe aren't taking steps to do? Or, are we doing all of the things that are pointing the ship in the right direction, so to speak? So I think, I don't know. I guess it's hard as a small company to be able to. Sorry, I'm like totally losing my train of thought. Full transparency, I'm very nervous. This is my first panel ever.
Oh, congratulations.
But I think one word that Len said that really stuck out to me was accessibility. And I think that comes down to so many, there's so many things that fall under that umbrella. It comes down to diversity. It comes down to the barrier to entry in a very expensive sport, whether that's skiing, mountain biking, whatever it is in the outdoor industry. And then I think it also comes down to just ease and intimidation. I think there's a lot of intimidation that surrounds skiing. And I think about some of the, media, it falls to so many levels, but I think it falls to a lot of the media that is produced a lot of the times, and trying to make that relatable is hard. And seeing, videos that are coming out from whatever Instagram accounts or TGR, it's amazing skiers doing these really cool things, and that's aspirational and beautiful in its own way. But how do we create content that relates to somebody who's never skied before, or has never even thought about it, or whatever it may be? So I guess relatability is something I try and focus on as a brand, and the content and the messaging that we're putting out is how do we make skiing relatable, fun, approachable, and something that everybody can do. And that's a big ask and a big question, but yeah, I don't know. I guess I'll start there.
Dan.
But
Absolutely. I think that over the last 3 years, as DEI became a big part of the conversation, and we've already been talking about climate change, it had everybody at our company looking within and seeing what we were doing and what we weren't doing, and going down to the nitty-gritty of like just looking at the fit of our product and like trying to be inclusive. And we had no idea, because like I'm a medium that wears a large, and like so I'm very focused on making stuff fit well on me. But like we realized that our fit gradient was really small, that we weren't taking care of the extra smalls or the XXS, and we weren't taking care of the double XLs. And it's stuff as simple as that you think we would have taken care of. But we were 12 years old at that point, and we looked within, we looked at our color palettes and started to look at, there's this broader range of people in the world, and we should think about the color palettes that work on different people's skin, like you and I talked about, Nina, right before this panel. We looked at the content that we were creating and tried to represent a broader, more diverse community that is the ski community. And then there's the whole aspect of just global warming and having an apparel company that was so focused on skiing. So in order to protect our company, we decided to start making summer apparel. And, sometimes it's going to be a long summer and sometimes it's going to be a long winter. We always hope for a long winter. But that was a way that we could protect the company and the jobs for the future. So it's definitely, everything gets wrapped up. And fortunately, we had our VP of product, a guy named Chris Bloom, came on. And he had come from some different brands like Fox Mountain Bike Apparel, Under Armour, doing ski apparel, mountain hardware. So all those things that anybody that knows Flylow is like all phases of our game: outdoor, alpine, mountain bike, alpine skiing, and mountain biking. And he was really great about showing me not only how we look within, but what we can do to change it. And so we've completely revamped all of that stuff that we've talked about, but that's just what we can do to start. We have to keep looking within and seeing how we can be better, because that's what it takes to make a company keep going. And that's what this, Snowsports industry needs is being able to adapt. Like I was saying before, we're a reflection of our community.
Let's talk a little bit about intimidation or things that are intimidating. So, on the one hand, I'm thinking this isn't unique to snow sports. If I was to take up tap dancing, which I'm probably going to do tomorrow, I would be very intimidated going into a tap dancing class or, what's the fancy dance? Flamenco? Is that a thing? Yeah. If I have to go do that tomorrow, I would be intimidated as hell. So I don't think this is something that is unique. Any community, any activity, a beginner is probably going to feel a bit of that level of intimidation. Another thing, raise your hand if you were on the mountain today, if you had a moment where you just felt a little bit intimidated. Yeah, like, you know what? This happens probably most days we go do things. So this is interesting, right? Dan and I were gonna go, I was coming in from skiing. I saw Dan, he's like, 1 lap, let's go ski lap. I'm like, okay. He's like, my knee hurts. And then frickin' Hoji runs up. And he's like, can I go ski with you? And you're not allowed to tell Hoji no. So we went and skied, and and I skied with some people today who maybe felt a little bit of like, okay, are we gonna be able to keep up here? And now I'm doing the exact same thing they were doing like 1 hour ago. This happens a lot. And I have not spent enough time thinking about this fact, that maybe that is something that's a little different about an activity like skiing or snowboarding. So this is my question. I don't necessarily need all of you to have an answer of this. This is best idea wins time. Have any of you thought about what we do with some of the inherent intimidation of skiing, snowboarding, whether you're brand new? Because one question is just coming into this. I've been skiing a long time now, and still today, I was like, okay. Yeah, I mean, and Rob Dickinson and Isaac, like we had, and you told me your knee was hurt and we were just gonna chill, and that is not what happened.
I sucked it up.
Yeah.
And then I was a lot slower than those guys.
Yeah, well. So anyway, thoughts on this? Best idea here? How, probably something useful, again, for the people in this room and like our entire global snow sports industry, no pressure?
I mean, my first thought that comes to mind is that Flylow has a lot of like young free ride people that are wearing our stuff. And it's a gaggle of like teenage or 20-something people that some of them are athletes, some of them are just like fans of the brand. But something that we've tried to do is ask our ambassadors to actually be ambassadors of goodwill and be nice in the lift line. Don't intimidate people going on the Jackson Hole tram, because I'm one of them. Because God forbid, I piss off those guys and Flylow Dan's car gets keyed or something, But I think that is something where it usually starts with like the influencers, and they're the most advanced skiers or snowboarders. They're on the hill every day. And those are people that I actually can influence. So companies can ask their ambassadors to actually be good.
I think we try and do something very similar at Icelantic. Every member of our athlete and ambassador team is considered family, and we do our best to be super proud of all of them. And all of them have done a very good job for the most part of speaking well and just being friendly and inclusive. I've seen situations where some of our athletes were out skiing and wanted to ski with other people who were maybe not as great of skiers, or they were new to the sport. And it's a beautiful thing where you can be in a situation, it's like, it doesn't matter what we ski. It doesn't matter if we're skiing groomers all day, greens, blues, whatever it may be. We're just out there having a good time. And I think perpetuating that inclusivity and that just friendliness is a big part of it. And it has to come from ambassadors and everybody.
I can speak to the receiving end of the generous ambassadors. I taught myself to ski in 2017. I was the biggest kid on the bunny hill. I had YouTube up, and I was like, how do I do this kind of turn? Still can't do that kind of turn today. But one of the things that I sort of in the path of creating Natives Outdoors, we were kind of around Bears Ears, and so I met a lot of snow sports athletes in the Salt Lake region because of the connection of the Salt Lake area to Bears Ears and what was going on around OR. And some of my earliest friends were like Brody Levin and Forrest Shearer, and I just was really honest of I want to go do these sort of adventures to tell these stories, but I'm not the greatest skier. And they really took me under their wing. And, and that mentorship gave me the confidence that I knew that I had the people and resources to, get better and and they believed in me, of course, which matters a lot. But I think I always think about that in terms of then how I treat people that I'm mentoring now, and how do I approach that, because as you all know, like, those people have a lot of influence and a lot of impact, and like word gets around about what people are like, right? So and especially if like that approachability and that just sort of willingness to share knowledge, and to like know, in sharing knowledge we're building community and we're building camaraderie, and I think that's a powerful thing.
Yeah, I mean, as like I said, I'm one of the newer people to this sport. I feel like an imposter every time I get on my skis, but I let that kind of settle in the back and enjoy it so much more. And I guess I ask, like, I question all the time, like, does skiing have to be like that cool? Like, it doesn't have to be really cool to be enjoyable. In fact, at some point, right? like I mean, we glitz and glam, and as much as I love like a really beautifully shot and rad ski film, and then like, yeah, it's fun at the end to like roll the credits and like show all like the screw ups at the end, but like, how many times do we get to see like somebody who's like learning and then like progressing? And then there's one influencer that I follow, and I'm forgetting her name right now off the top of my head, but she whenever she posts, she's an influencer in the running world, and whenever she posts, she's like always like, please don't, she's skiing, she's learning to ski, and she's like, please don't give me feedback on my skiing, because I just don't need it. I'm just trying to have fun out here. What if we all kind of adopted a little bit more of that mentality, right? Like, if we started to be like, I'm just out here to have fun. We're all here to have fun. There's no reason to like, to be worried, intimidated about what we're doing. I mean, sometimes, yeah, you're staring down the barrel of a chute and you're like, oh my God, am I going to be able to do this? And the best part about it is when you do it and you feel so alive, even if it wasn't pretty, even if it wasn't the best, the best activity you've ever done. Like, you've had days where it's not that great, but it's still so much fun. And sharing that with other people, I think, is something that we need to focus more on, is sharing like the times, like the 9 times you got up after you fell, 9 of them. I was asked the other day, like, what's your favorite day skiing? And I swear to you, it's like the day I skied at A Basin from the top to the bottom without falling. That was the best day. And I've had some great days after that, like with lots of snow and all that stuff, but the best day ever, still to this day, is like the day that I felt like I accomplished something. And so I don't think that skiing needs to be that cool. I don't think the outdoor stuff needs to be so cool. We don't need to glitz and glam it. Maybe kind of show. And I think that also removes us away from like some of those expectations of like needing to have like the coolest gear and having to look like my kit matches and having the freshest stuff. Like, you can enjoy this on anything and in any way. Just get out there and and all of us could be responsible for that. We all have the tools, the ability to bring someone out and say, hey, let's go have fun today. And you don't need to be perfect. And having a little more grace, I think, is the world that I want to live in the outdoor industry.
One of the things I really do love, and this maybe is maybe a little more unique to kind of our mountain sports stuff, is, like in climbing, there's not the climbing rule book. Like, our communities learn these kind of ethics. We talk about backcountry skiing ethics and codes. And what I love is our ability that we don't need like legislation on this for some of the things you're talking about. It's just like, if you happen to be in this room or watching this panel session after the fact, that we just know, okay, right. So part of what it is to be a skier or snowboarder means you are never making fun of somebody's gear. You are never, it's like we just don't do that as a community because that's messed up, right? And so to just follow up on your points, we've talked about mentorship, and we've just talked about don't make it doesn't need to be cool. And people are out, help those people, celebrate those people, but I'm not like I'm thinking through like backcountry ethics. We talk about that a lot. There are certain practices that we've kind of, as a community, called best practices. It'd be cool to start developing the official, unofficial rule book of some best practices on this. That it's like, if you're actually a member of this community, here's going to be some of the things. I don't know. That's just a thought.
There were some hats that I get roped into making hats for a lot of people, because it goes further than money, like it helps people do good stuff. But anyway, I helped out the Winter Wildlands Alliance make a hat that said "Ski Kind" on it, and I didn't know what it was about. I just liked the idea of it. It's just, and it turned out it was about being good stewards of and having good backcountry ethics and being nice to your other backcountry people. But I saw it as like such a broader statement, and it was cool and it was funky with pink writing. So all of a sudden, like this idea of "Ski Kind," it applies to all of us.
This is what I want to do. I want to open this up to questions earlier than we've been doing, and if you don't have any, I'm just going to keep asking my own. So let's see how this goes. So the question was, a common thing that gets heard is, hey, my backcountry ski zone or my ski resort that I go at is already crowded enough. Why do I want to be supporting DEI initiatives and getting more people coming to crowd my home turf?
My taco truck is pretty busy, like down in Tucson. I don't want more people going there. Tacos are really good. I mean, it's just kind of, one of the things that I always say is like, this gets tied to larger policy. This is like totally flying by the seat of my pants on this, but from what I'm aware of, like hasn't been a new ski resort sort of approved for construction in the United States, and that's policy. No, I would say not, but there's been very few. It's been very minimal compared to like the boom that we had decades ago. And that's a policy-related question, is like, if there's this demand, of course, then like, how do we meet it? And of course, we have to think about environmental implications of this and what that means. In Tucson, it's interesting because, it's a ski resort that's mom and pop, owned by a family, and it attracts a lot of folks from Mexico, from Tucson, from other areas. But one of the things I always say is that brings strength and stability to a resort if you have a lot of constituencies involved in that process. Whether that's, we might be looking at a future where resorts' economic viability is threatened. And what do we do? How do we build a constituency to protect these areas? And generally, when you look at larger level policy, larger level environmental work, you have to have a broad swath of folks. If it's just the current state of the ski industry now, it's going to probably lose. And the reason being is that we're looking at a future right now where federal public lands are going to be under review, or basically there's a lot more co-management that's going to happen between tribes and the federal government. And right now, the number of native skiers is very minimal. and there are also going to be the constituencies that are going to have a lot of sway on the management decisions that happen there. So isn't it a good idea to get those folks in the door and on the mountain, and have an investment in that?
I think, the resorts and the trailheads are already crowded, and getting to the ski hills is difficult, that we all need to come together and try to push for more public transit and making it easier for all of us to get there. That's going to make it easier for all people, that are looking to join the ski community, regardless. But just sitting back and complaining about it, it's frustrating, I know. So that's when, we have to act.
I think it's a matter of attitude too. I'm in the Front Range of Colorado. I-70 is horrible on the weekends. It's something like, I could sit here and be super angry in traffic, or I could say, okay, well, this isn't the best, but look at all these people going out to do something that's really rad. And whether it's their first day or they're going to ski an hour or the whole day, I feel like it's coming together as a, this is a good thing. Skiing is fun. It's supposed to be fun.
I mean, there's no simple answer, I don't think. Ski passes have never been cheaper, but also access to skiing has also never been harder. They kind of conflict, but somehow, these places are also getting inundated with a lot of people. But, I think what's wrong with a lot of people realizing something that I would assume a lot of us have always known, right? The pandemic opened a lot of people's eyes and minds to like a world that like they had never knew existed. And, with that comes like we're going through some growing pains. I mean, I live in a ski town, and it has definitely experienced a lot of pain due to the influx of, the cheap ski pass and people taking advantage of, housing and things like that, and Airbnb and all of these things just creating like this kind of storm. But with more people involved in the sport, I mean, that means more investment. More people are going to be trying to make these places better. The gear is going to get better. All of these things can also improve the sport. So I don't know. Like, we've got to do both, but with nuance and care, I think. And I think that all of us have a responsibility to that.
So the question is, given sort of the high price point of entry for skiing, what can brands, companies in the snow sports world be doing to make things easier for people of different economic statuses to get into the door?
I can kind of take this one first. I think, and it's funny, I actually just listened to your podcast episode with Jason Leventhal of J Skis, who I think said it pretty well for, an industry that's very interconnected. I think a lot of times brands don't do a great job of working together. I think there's a lot of room in this industry to provide different opportunities, whether it's a weekend or days of skiing at a very low intro rate where you can go get boots, get skis, get 3 lessons through the season. Things like that, like where we come together as an industry, both on, the resort side, on ski side, bindings, whatever it might be. Sure, maybe the profits aren't there, or at the end of the day, the bottom line isn't where you want it to be, but that is something we're doing to build the future of skiing, if we can make that happen. I definitely have lots of those ideas in my head, and I guess it's the challenge of how do we make that happen? How do we come together as an industry and pull something like that together? Because I think it's super feasible.
Is that happening?
I think it's starting to. I mean, I've seen, there's been things like this demo, right, where you can come and test skis and test outerwear and boots and skis, but is it super obtainable for the average person to come here and spend, the cost for Blister Summit, the cost of lodging, the cost of getting here? Is that the most obtainable thing? Are we doing the most we can in that category? I don't know. I think that's something I'm still trying to figure out.
I think, in some respects, it's supporting organizations that are going to bring people up and introduce them to the sport, like Big City Mountaineers. Yeah. I know, the local Tahoe Truckee School District and where I live, they're doing school days where they take these kids, every kid in the class, up to the ski hill, and my kids are fortunate, and obviously they have to ski.
My kids
but a lot of the kids in their class, it's half of our community is Latino, and some of these kids had never even turned up the road to Palisades Tahoe, and my wife was telling me this story, and they're just their eyes were wide open, they were blown away. It was only 2 miles away. So stuff like that, and encouraging the schools to do it, and then from a pure brand standpoint, we can generate money and we can spread word about this stuff, and I think that's great. But I think also looking at our product line and making it more accessible. So what I'm going to send to Blister to review may not be the stuff that we're making that is attainable for people, but the stuff works. We make a $190 pant that it works. It'll keep you dry. If you're going to go in the backcountry, I suggest getting something that's more breathable, but you can make it happen And then I just thinking in my head about like used gear and how like consignment stores and just showing people how they could get that stuff without spending so much money. Not a bad idea either.
Love it.
One of the projects that we've been working on through one of our athletes, Connor Ryan, skier, he's a ambassador for Icon Pass, but we've been working on doing an Indigenous ski scholarship, and it's been in collaboration with like Smith and Solomon and Patagonia, but it's basically working with folks that are near an Icon resort, and they go through an application process about why they want to ski, what they're going to plan to do with this, and I think this year we awarded something around 15 scholarships, and folks got snowboard, boots, if they needed it, and a full kit. And one of the things that's been really amazing from that is just hearing back from, we've been doing this for 2 years now, but hearing back from the folks that were last year's scholarship recipients and how much they love skiing and they're trying to get their family into it too. And just seeing how that's spread. And that's been really successful and really awesome to work with a pass company, is the big bad monster that's making our resorts too accessible. It's also building that long-term runway of a community of folks that will continue to be invested in this industry.
Yeah, from the brand's point of view, there's a lot that they're doing. I think at least they're thinking about and they're kind of questioning. But I think like a lot of us, maybe I'm assuming too much, but a lot of us aren't a member of a brand. We don't work for an organization, but like these groups exist. Exclusive ski touring, native outdoors, all of these groups exist in your communities. And maybe they aren't outdoors focused, but maybe you're the person to bring the outdoor focus to the group. Right? There's all of these nonprofits are like working their butts off and volunteering for an organization, even one day every quarter, really takes a lot of pressure off the people who are working there and could really feel great for you, like internally. I do a lot of volunteer work. I do a lot of like outreach work. And every day when I'm like, it's snowing and it's a POW day and I'm like, oh, I gotta ski with these kids. Like some days you're like, oh man, it's not gonna. But then every single day, my heart is richer. My life is filled with joy because I gave somebody something that was given to me by somebody else, and that's something that we could all do.
Who wants to recap that question?
Makes sense at all.
Yeah.
It's how does a nonprofit reach a marketing director at a brand in the snow sports industry?
And get a yes, and make this work for both.
Make it
Yeah.
seem enticing as well, right?
Yeah. It's a tough one.
I think they, like nonprofits are businesses, and they, obviously successful ones are ones that communicate their message well through content and social media, and then that is something that then inherently, like marketing directors are going to be attracted to. So approaching a brand and saying, hey, here's a chance that you can do good. Here's how you can support us with your product or with, like your customer file, your, like all of the customers, your email list and stuff like that. And here's what we can do for you. And it's, it's simply, spreading the word that this company has a soul. And I think, it's the same question that an athlete should be, it's the same thing that an athlete should be thinking about when they approach a brand as well. And, we all want to work with as many nonprofits as we can. We just need to be approached, and we need to be, we need that information so that you're not just throwing money everywhere, because then you're not going to be as impactful.
Yeah, I think to follow up on that, I feel like on the brand side, we get requests from lots of nonprofits every day, and my inbox is flooded with them. Hey, can you donate skis? Can you sponsor this X, Y, and Z? And it's so hard because if I dive into a deck or really get into it, I'm like, this is so cool. I want to support this. This is gonna serve this audience or this population. And so at the end of the day, it's kind of a game of which lever can I pull that's going to do the most good and that's going to serve the most amount or the greatest number of people. And if it's not dollar amount, okay, can it be product? Will that help? Obviously product doesn't help pay the bill at the end of the day, but like maybe there's an auction, and I think it's just trying to, like you said, figure out what makes the most sense to make the biggest impact.
Authenticity goes a long way as well.
Yeah.
Being completely honest and authentic about what your mission is as a nonprofit. In another life, I worked in nonprofit development, so I was always asking people for money all the time. And it takes a lot of just being 100% pure and honest about, like, I believe this is going to do something good. And then having a little bit of proof of that you've done some good before. It takes a little creative thinking, but it's possible.
Who's recapping that question? I'm now just...
Yeah, I think the question, how do we address climate change, and how do we think about that?
Solve climate change for me right now.
First question is like, how do we address climate change? And I think the second part is like, how does DEI and diversity fit into this larger equation? I think in large part, the Sonoran Avalanche Center started out as a joke. I think we had 3 IPAs at that point. But in Tucson, it's like we're living at the fucking tip of the spear of climate change. Mount Lemmon Ski Resort has no artificial snow. It basically gets whatever we get. I think we've gotten 62 inches of snow this year. Going strong, going for a lot more hopefully. But it's in many ways it's the canary in the coal mine. And we're looking at there was a 1961 article in the New York Times that was selling Tucson as a ski destination. Right? And it was called Desert Ski Trails. You can look it up. And it talked about how the length of the season was from early December until April. And now we're lucky to be open 20 days a year. And, granted, we poach the resort when it's closed and ski the ice. But, it's like we're skiing some pretty terrible snow. And, I think one of the things that I've been thinking about is like, okay, like, haha rocks, but it's a real thing for us. And it's like one of these things is like almost in deglorifying skiing, it allows us to have that ability to actually sometimes most of the time that we go ski in the backcountry, it's usually pretty shitty, right? I mean, it's that 80-20 rule. It's like, why don't we talk about the 80% of when it's just crust? Or when it's just weeds, or when we're just bushwhacking. There's, of course, some of that, but I think in terms of the media that you see out there, it's that perfect powder turn, it's the deep pow, which is true, and it's like that's something we should celebrate for sure. But it's something that's going to be increasingly more rare if we don't address climate change. I think the other part of this equation is snowpack is our water. Like when we ski, we're tapping into a very important part of our water cycle. And I think one of the things that when we, it's like how much are we talking about our hydrological cycle and the importance of snow and educating our consumer base of what this matters? Because we're having a pretty decent snow year, but there's still going to be a shortage of water on the Colorado because all the soil that is from here, between here and all the tributaries to the Colorado, they're sucking up 50% of the water that would otherwise end up in the Bureau of Reclamation's models. They're assuming that this is 75 or 80% of that water is getting there, but they're finding that it's way less. And one of the things that we, as skiers, we have the platform and the ability to do is to talk about how these places are changing. And we have such a privilege to tap into this side of the water cycle, but it's also that bellwether. I think skiing here in Crested Butte, that water is going to come out of my tap in Tucson. And it's like, okay, what ski company is going to come do a brand shoot or talk about, in Tucson, Arizona, the doors open. I'm happy to take you on some backcountry lines on Mount Lemmon. But it's like also like I think about the Marquette skis like that are no longer made. Those are perfect for Mount Lemmon ski conditions, but we have to make do with destroying our backcountry skis instead. But in thinking about what are the sort of products that we could offer in the future that are really durable, that would actually be the rock skis. I mean, like make them out of kayak material, Marquette did it and now they're no longer around. So
I think brands, and everybody's talking about it, and it's, it's reducing your footprint by using better materials, investing in, in sourcing materials that are recycled, that can be recycled, that can be compostable. And ski manufacturers are doing it. Apparel manufacturers are definitely doing it. But it's also stuff like lead times, like the difference between my jackets showing up late and me having to air freight them in, or me putting it on a boat that burns so much less carbon. Like that is super important to us. So, as a brand, we're trying to forecast further out, try to get everything on the boats, hope the boats are getting more efficient as well. And the biggest thing, at least for Flylow, is durability. Make a product that you don't have to throw away. Make a product that you can fix, you can mend, you can get your hippie hat out and just stitch it up and fix it and keep it going. And maybe we make that the new cool, is having a patch on your pant.
Also, I guess the question is if we diversify and make ski hills more equitable, wouldn't everyone be really sad? All those people would be really sad if they couldn't ski it anymore. It's a thought. I mean, if we had more people invested in the sport, they're all going to fight to keep the sport alive, and by making whatever sacrifices they need to make in order to continue it on. A question for your question.
No, absolutely to that. I think that's great. And I think another thing that we need to talk about more as an entire community is actually advocacy and lobbying and voting.
Yeah.
Now I want to go macro, because I think you all just talked about some things as individuals that we can do, but I think we do need to see more coming together of big ass players in the snow sports world, all banding together and start to use that power in terms of influencing policy. And if that's not happening, honestly, I don't like our chances with a lot of this other stuff. If we're actually serious about making impact, so that's something that I've been wrestling with sort of a lot and trying to think through. So the individual actions, fantastic. But if we're actually serious about this, our snow sports industry is not united like it needs to be. And this needs to start with the biggest players. And then we can all fall in line and do our part. But I think if we don't see that happening ASAP, that's actually probably the most doom and gloom scenario, and the stupidest, the most slitting our own throats type of thing as an industry.
I mean, in some of our work, we work with the Department of Interior, and I know Deb and whatever. But if you look at their senior advisors, there's no skiers in that highest levels of government policy. And we're kind of this anomaly of Natives Outdoors coming to them, of native skiers talking to the native Secretary of Interior, and it's oh wow, there's actually an it perked her interest in a way that isn't there. But I think more reflectively, across the board, there's not enough representation in government, in our elected members of Congress, of folks that are part of this industry and that will advocate for it. They'll pay the lip service, blah blah blah. Aaron, fellow SAC conspirator, went skiing with Senator Martin Heinrich of New Mexico. And, those sort of events where you can get a senator, a congressperson, a special advisor to the Secretary of Interior to go out, spend some time on the Hill, honestly, that's going to be the most memorable trip that they've ever been on, because most of the time they're out just looking at a new statue that's been created or something like that. Just really boring stuff. And I think really in leaning into that, it's there's ways in which that can come together, and that has real impact.
I also, I don't want to say that you're wrong, but I push back because I also have in my own personal experience, brought down senators, government officials on rivers, on the Yampa River, one of the last wild running rivers of the West. And they were talking, you know, oh, how beautiful, how scenic, how wonderful these places are. And then on the bus ride home back to the boathouse, they're like, so yeah, we got to clear this place through. We got to get this contract to happen so that we can get these farmers this water, blah, 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 blah. I think we should say screw them and take it on ourselves. Like, we need to stop. Like, I know it's like politics sounds gross and nasty, and man, does it suck to think that like I don't want to run for an elective office, but like we kind of have to, because if we don't act, like they aren't going to. They'll give us lip service all day, but they won't act in the way that's in our interest. So like talk to your county commissioners, get on those boards, sit on those like really long Zoom meetings, like act yourself. Like it's dire. Like they aren't going to do it. We have to save it ourselves. Like, and everyone has a responsibility to do that.
We're going to leave it at that. Please come talk to these folks. Thank you very much for this. I, once again, think we've done some good work in terms of getting some good thoughts and conversations started. As we said, there are a lot of brands here. And I very much appreciate the perspectives and insights and challenges tonight. So thank you all.